Hello, welcome to Herbology 101. This is our second class. Today we are going to talk about ginkgo and catnip, and we are going to talk about tinctures and herbal extracts. So let's go ahead and let's get started today. First up, we are going to do a quick review. We have about 3 questions. So our first one is, what is a carminative? So is a carminative A, strengthens the nervous system and improves nutrition and favors normal activity of all the organs in the body? Does a carminative B help the body adapt to stress? Or does a carminative C expel gas and release pressure on the gastrointestinal system? Or D, cause body tissues to contract? So I'll give you just a moment to think about that. And when we're done, we'll turn the page. So hopefully you've thought about that for a minute. And now let's look at the answer. The answer is C, expel gas and release pressure on the gastrointestinal system. Now let's look at our next question. What is the botanical name for peppermint? Is it A, Salvia officinalis? Is it B, Ginkgo biloba? Is it C, Mentha piperita? Or is it D, Mentha spicata? So let's give you just a second to think over that one. And then we'll go to our answer. All right, so our answer is Mentha piperita. The botanical name for peppermint is Mentha piperita. All right, our final question. What is tea? Is tea A, an infusion of dandelion? Is tea B, an infusion of the Camellia sinensis plant? Is it C, the boiled root of chicory? Or is it D, a beverage made of mango juice? So we'll give you just a moment to think that one over. And the answer is an infusion made of the Camellia sinensis plant. So those are all of our review questions for today. Hopefully you got those correct. Let's go ahead and we're going to talk about properties today. We have 6 properties today. Our first one is a diaphoretic. Now, a diaphoretic is something that helps to induce sweating. You might want this in the case of retaining water, or if you're trying to remove toxins from the body, in the case of flus, things like that, where the body needs to work to rid itself of some type of bug. So on the opposite side of that spectrum is a refrigerant. And a refrigerant is something that helps take heat away from the body. And these are really interesting because you can actually feel them when you use them. You can actually feel the herb on your skin getting cool. And my first experience with refrigerants was with chickweed, and I didn't think that it would really do what my teacher had said it was going to do. But our assignment was to make a poultice, so I did, and I put it on my skin, and I thought for sure that the only coolness that I would feel was from the water that we used in making the preparation. But sure enough, you could actually feel the skin becoming cooler because of the refrigerant action of that chickweed. A lot of the mints also have this property as well, and if you think of peppermint, you can see how peppermint and a lot of the mints are cooling. The next one on our list today is an expectorant. And an expectorant and antitussive often go together. We sometimes see these put together in the pharmacy in the cold and flu aisle. An expectorant is something that helps expel mucus. An antitussive is something to help quiet coughing. there is a brand of cold and flu medication that you might have heard of called Robitussin. And you will see that it has this tussin root here because of this right here. There is also a brand of cough medicine that is called tussin. And often when we have something that is for coughing, it is also tends to be paired with an expectorant as well. So the next time you go to the pharmacy or to the store and you walk down the cold and flu aisle, look for these words, expectorant or Robitussin or tussin, and I guarantee that you will see them there. And so the next thing on our list of properties today is a vasoactive, and a vasoactive is something that helps improve blood circulation. This can be blood circulation to the entire body, or it can be blood circulation to just one part of the body, like we are going to learn about today. And our final property for today is a nervine, and a nervine is something just used to calm the nerves. You can kind of figure that out again from the root word here. Hear about people whose nerves are jangled. A nervine would be something that would be helpful to them. So those are our properties for this week. If you have any questions about these, please feel free to post a message in our classroom, and I will be more than happy to clarify for you. So now let's go ahead and let's talk about our herbs this week. This week we are going to talk about the herbs catnip and ginkgo. So let's start with catnip. If you have ever been around catnip and cats together, you will know it makes them a little crazy or it makes them go to sleep. And we're going to talk about why that is. First, let's use our senses to get to know it a little bit. If you've ever been around it, some people say that it smells and tastes a little like mint. And if you look at this leaf right here, you'll notice it looks a lot like, especially spearmint. That is because catnip is in the mint family. It probably doesn't taste quite as good as, say, a spearmint or a lemon balm, but it does make a good tea, and it has a vaguely minty taste and smell. As far as look, it looks like a mint. It looks a whole lot like lemon balm or spearmint. Not so much like peppermint, but peppermint looks a little bit different from other herbs anyhow. And feel, it's a little furry. You can see it's got very little soft, smoother leaves than lemon balm, rougher leaves than peppermint, and a little bit of a soft feel to it. So now, let's talk about it. So the botanical name for catnip is Nipeta cataria. Its properties include being a diaphoretic, it is a sedative, and a nervine. These are probably its two best properties for humans. As far as other properties, it's a carminative, as many of the mint plants are, and it is also a refrigerant. Now, as a part of the mint family, we typically use it in infusions, tinctures, capsules. It helps promote sleep and relaxation. This is primarily what we use it for. It's kind of interesting in that sometimes with cats, when you see it given to cats, it makes them act funny and a little bit crazy. For most cats, there are some cats where it puts them to sleep. And the reason that it makes them act a little crazy is because it it has the same effect in cats that it does in humans, in that it calms them down and helps them relax. And that's why they feel comfortable acting the way that they sometimes do, a little wild. Whereas in humans, it just helps us relax and go to sleep. So, so even though it looks different in humans and in cats, it's still that same action. Uh, there's a saying about catnip, about growing catnip, that if you set it, the cats will eat it. If you sow it, the cats don't know it. And what this means is that if the plants are transplanted and they're bruised, the smell will attract the cats, and then they will roll in the plant and they will roll it into dust and destroy it. However, if the seeds are planted, if you sow the seeds yourself, you don't transplant it, you don't go to your neighbor's house and dig up part of their catnip plant and bring it back to your house, you sow it from seed, then the plant grows without the leaves being disturbed and bruised. The cats won't smell it and they'll leave it alone. Now, before I had ever heard this saying, I actually had some experience with this. When I was little, my mother we had lots of cats, and we had catnip. And she had transplanted that catnip, I'm not entirely sure from somewhere, but she put it out by our horse barn. And the cats would just go and they would roll it to dust. It never really could stay there because she couldn't keep it there because the cats always knew it was there. Fast forward to when I am in my own home and gardening, I had planted catnip. I'd sown it from seed, and we lived in a neighborhood where there were cats everywhere. There were feral cats. We would have to take cats to the vet all the time to have them fixed and then re-released in the feral cat program. They were everywhere. And I planted this catnip one year thinking there's no way that this catnip is going to survive in this neighborhood. But for some reason, the cats never found my catnip, and I could never figure out why. And a few years later, I heard this saying, and I thought, oh, wow. So that makes sense. I had sown the plant from seed, and the cats never found it, despite the fact that they were all over our neighborhood. So, so just a little saying there, and a little truth in that I have found that I thought was interesting. Also, because catnip is part of the mint family, it is, number one, it's a self-seeder, and number two, it grows underground through the root systems, and it spreads like many of the mint family plants. So unless you have a place where you're not going to be upset about your catnip taking over, provided the cats don't get to it, make sure that you either put it in a pot or you can put it somewhere where it's contained. I found this out the hard way also one year when I had a huge crop of catnip that had gone to seed. And so I cut it all down and I threw it over the fence into our chicken yard, thinking that the chickens would take care of it. Well, the chickens took care of it. They scratched it all over the entire chicken yard. And the next spring, when the plants started to come up, I had an entire chicken yard full of catnip. So you have to watch out where you put it, what you do with it if you don't want it everywhere. So that's a little bit about catnip. Let's move on to ginkgo, which is a fascinating plant in my opinion. I want you to start with look. We're going to talk about smell and taste here in a minute, but let's look at how it looks. So it has these things on it. They're called ginkgo nuts. They look a little bit like peaches or maybe nectarines. They also have these leaves, and most people say they look like fans. They're a very simple leaf in structure. If you think about a maple leaf or an oak leaf, by comparison, the leaf structure in a ginkgo plant is very primitive. And we're going to talk about why that is. And we're also going to talk about smell and taste here in a minute. So let's go ahead and let's go on. So the botanical name for ginkgo is Gingko biloba. Now, unlike many other plants, you're not going to get Gingko biloba confused. You're not going to get that common name or the botanical name confused with any other plant. Let's talk about properties and uses, and then I will tell you why that is. So primarily, as far as properties go, we use the leaf here in the Western world, and it is considered a vasoactive. Specifically, it is vasoactive on the brain. It helps improve the blood flow to the brain. This is the leaf. Primarily here in the United States and in the Western world, that is what we use. Now, in Chinese medicine and in Asian medicine, they use the ginkgo nuts that I showed you on the previous page, and they have a lot of different properties. They are an expectorant, they are an antitussive, they are an anti-asthmatic, they are a sedative, and they are astringent. However, we generally don't use them around here. And I'm going to tell you why here in just a moment. We see ginkgo leaf used in infusions, in tinctures, in capsules. You can go into a lot of health food stores and you can find ginkgo capsules. I found a ginkgo ginseng tincture just the other day in the health food store when I went in. Sometimes you see it mixed with ginkgo, sometimes you see it mixed with garlic as well to help improve cardiac health, to help improve the blood flow to the brain. And what it does, it primarily helps improve circulation in the brain to help with focus and mental clarity. People who are older and aging use it a lot. Students use it a lot. If you have a lot that you are having to do academically, you see people use it a lot. Like I said, usually in conjunction with ginseng to help with alertness. So you've got alertness and mental clarity, ginseng and ginkgo. And like I said, sometimes with older people, they'll add in garlic for that cardiac health factor. Now, what we are talking about are preparations of the leaf. Now, let's talk about the ginkgo nuts. So female ginkgo trees in close proximity to male trees produce the ginkgo nuts, and they smell terrible. I have heard the smell compared to dog excrement. And typically, we don't see the female trees here in the United States. Ginkgo is actually a tree that is very, very commonly used in landscaping because it is a very hardy tree. It is resistant to pollution. It's resistant to drought, heat, rain. It's a very, very hardy tree. So it works well in all kinds of landscaping, and you often see it in urban landscaping situations. My entire college campus is covered in ginkgo trees. But they are all male trees, because if a female tree is in close proximity to a male tree, it makes these nuts, and they smell really, really bad. So the other interesting thing about ginkgo is ginkgo trees, even though we plant primarily male trees, they are able to switch sexes and become female trees. There's some lizards that can do this as well. Ginkgo trees can do it as well. if there is not a female tree close by. And then what happens is that some poor landscaper has to come in because someone has complained because of the awful smell, and they have to dig that tree up and they have to replace it with a male tree that's not going to produce nuts. I have smelled this smell before when I was in college. It's pretty terrible. And actually, they plant these in Boston and New York a lot. So usually once a year in the fall, you will see an article about the local residents who are so upset because they have to smell the ginkgo nuts from the tree, the female tree that has either switched to female or it has been accidentally planted. And you will see an article questioning the wisdom of using ginkgo trees in this type of landscaping, of the neighbors complaining because the nuts get on the ground and they smell and they get stepped on, and it's no fun. But ultimately, they really are the best tree for this type of planting. So, and they also have all of the properties that we mentioned previously. They're expectorant, they're antitussive, they're antiasthmatic, they're sedative, they're astringent. They smell terrible, but they can be eaten in small quantities. So, and this isn't the only thing that's interesting about ginkgo. Ginkgo is actually considered a living fossil. It has remained unchanged for 200 million years. It has no living relatives. That's why I said at the beginning that you're never going to get ginkgo confused with anything else. They have actually compared the leaf structure of the ginkgo leaf, the modern ginkgo leaf, with fossils that they have found from 65 million years ago, and they are exactly the same. This tree has remained unchanged for 200 million years. And when I look at it, I can really see, I can just kind of see the dinosaurs walking by it. It just looks to me like a very old tree. And I think it's a really, really interesting tree. Also, in the fall, those bright green leaves change into this beautiful yellow color. And that's another reason people like them for landscaping. In the fall, they're just this beautiful golden yellow colored tree. So that's a little bit about ginkgo. We've talked about ginkgo, and we have talked about catnip today. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to post them in the classroom, and I will be more than happy to clarify any questions that you have. So now let's talk a little bit about our properties for this week. We are going to talk about tinctures or herbal extracts. Now, so what is an herbal extract or a tincture? So a tincture is a liquid extract of an herb that can be taken orally. The liquid used to extract is typically alcohol, vegetable glycerin, or cider vinegar. When we use alcohol, we are talking about something like vodka, or you can use brandy as well. But whatever you use, it needs to be at least 80 proof or higher. If you are unable to use alcohol in your preparation, you can use vegetable glycerin. In this case, you would be making an extract that is called a glycerite. The procedure is slightly different, but it produces a sweeter preparation that is more suitable for children or people who cannot take alcohol. It does not last as long. With an alcohol tincture, you can safely keep it for quite some time. With a glycerite, you're going to get, in my opinion, 6 months to a year max. The third type of herbal extract is made with cider vinegar, only cider vinegar. You have to make sure that you are going to only use cider vinegar, not white vinegar. And this is sometimes called an acetum. This, again, can be used if you cannot use alcohol. Obviously, it does not taste as good, but it is another option, and it is slightly more shelf-stable than a glycerite. Now, you can also use an acetum in different ways with different herbs as salad dressing too, instead of just a preparation. You can make an acetum with culinary herbs and make it into something you can eat as well. Now, you have a video about tinctures, about how to make a tincture. This is actually a video on an acetum with cider vinegar. In the video, we talk about using dried herbs. If you're going to make an acetum, I recommend using dried herbs. If you're going to make an alcohol tincture, you can use fresh herbs. You can use fresh herbs with a glycerite, although I would recommend using only dried herbs. So fresh herbs with an alcohol tincture, dried herbs with a glycerite or an acetum. So you have this video posted in the classroom. Go ahead and watch that video. When you are finished, you have a couple of questions for this week. So these are your 2 questions for the week. So I want you to name the 3 different types of herbal extracts. And for your second question, I want you to think of 3 additional herbs that you might want to use to make an herbal extraction. And I want you to answer the following questions. So you're going to make a little profile, basically. You're going to tell me the herb name, the properties of the herb. Tell me what liquid you will use to make the extraction. Are you going to use glycerin? Are you going to use vinegar? Are you going to use alcohol? And tell me why. And then finally, I want you to tell me what you will use your extraction for. So if you have any questions, please feel free to let me know, and I will be more than happy to answer them for you. This is all we have for our second class today. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you've learned something. And I thank you for watching. I look forward to hearing the answers to your questions, and I will see you next week. Thank you.